So parallel parking. When you're parallel parking, you always want to check clearly. Well, basically what parallel means is side by side. So there's also a term called double parking. Double parking is when you pull up beside a vehicle and you guys are parked right side by side, one after the other. But on like a residential street or a main road, you're not allowed to double park. You can't just pull up beside, another vehicle, door to door, because you're going to be obstructing traffic. So what you need to do is come up to that vehicle and then either park in front or behind him, parallel, running where you guys are in the single file. That's what parallel parking means. It doesn't mean that you're right beside it together. It means that you're behind it and you guys are in a straight row together. So parallel parking is a maneuver that requires multiple driving skills. You need to use signaling, you need to use braking, and you need to use reversing. You need to use good judgment and use of your side view mirrors and looking through your back, and good calm vehicle control. So I think that's why people think parallel parking is a little challenging, because you have to use every driving skill you have in order to safely and effectively parallel park. And people just get freaked out by it, I think, because you get really close to the other vehicles as you're parallel parking, and it's not a very natural movement for your vehicle. So it takes a lot of turning the wheel. So you always check early in your rear view. So as you're planning to parallel park, you look through your rear view mirror and see if there's anybody behind you. If there's somebody following you really closely and you're intending to stop right away, you definitely want to prepare yourself so that you're in a situation where there's vehicles behind you that they have enough time to stop safely. You apply your brake well in advance and you start to slow down, but you would also signal to let drivers know behind you that you intend to park. Stop when the rear bumper of your vehicle is in line with the rear bumper of vehicle B. So this just shows you the steps, and this is on page 52 of your driver's guide. This shows you there's like four or five main steps to parallel parking. As you can see, you pull up beside them. So the first image at the very top, where that vehicle is right beside the other one, that's double parking. That's a term that you might see where it'll ask if you're allowed to double park. You are never allowed to double park on a road. It just doesn't make sense. That's why you would see parking lots are designed to have vehicles side by side, but you would never want to do that on a residential or urban road. And then you can see the vehicle A is reversing a little bit, and it's swinging its tires to the right, or it's steering to the right so that the right side of the vehicle is moving in. And then it reverses straight into the spot, and then it adjusts. You turn your wheel to the left side so that your vehicle's back end starts moving left into the spot, and then you pull ahead so you're in a nice little position. So again, I think that driving is a lot easier to visualize than to discuss it. So I have a video that shows these steps of how to parallel park and what not to do when you're parallel parking.
Parallel parking requires practice. You must also learn to judge if a parking space is large enough for your vehicle.
There you go. Those were some do's and don'ts of parallel parking and just the visualization of what a parallel park looks like. He also mentioned being too far away from the curb. So one good tip to remember is that vehicles need to be 50 centimeters within 50 centimeters of a curb. And that's usually about a foot, just to imagine in your mind, but they very well could ask you on the test, how close or how far, how close does your vehicle need to be from the curb? And it needs to be within 50 centimeters of each other. Also for the road test, when you're actually driving the vehicle with an examiner in the car with you, they will ask you to do a parallel park. And that's one of the things that they're gonna judge is, one, how well you did your parallel park getting into the vehicle, but how close you are to the curb, because you legally need to be within that 50 centimeters. And that's because they don't want your vehicle so far out that you're obstructing traffic. So another type of parking is angle parking. It's not as commonly used anymore as the angle, but what we are used to seeing is angle parking can be anywhere from a 90-degree angle, like we commonly see in parking lots, to a 30-degree angle, like here in the image. That vehicle, all those vehicles are set at about 45 to 30-degree angle. So how those work is, these are the following steps that you should use when you enter an angle parking space. So you're coming up, the blue car there, he's intending to park in that spot. So he would signal that he's intending to turn right into that spot. He would slow down and be 30 degrees from the curb. So he needs to be 1.5 meters away from the rear of the vehicles already parked. So what that basically means is, as he comes into that parking spot, he wants to position himself in the middle of the vehicles and make sure that the back of his vehicle is within a good range compared to the other vehicles. If he's too far out, again, he's going to be obstructing other vehicles that need to get by. So you want to get in there nice and snug and close as the curb as possible, but not on the curb. In a 90-degree angle parking, you must allow about 2 meters in order to make the sharp turn required. Okay, so they're talking about as you're coming into that parking spot, you don't want to be too close to the other vehicles, because then you're not giving your vehicle enough room to make the turn smoothly. So you always want to be out a far enough distance that you can you have enough room to swing your vehicle into that spot. So keep moving slowly forward until the front of your wheels make a light contact with the curb, or within that 50 centimeters, like I said. So you never really want to like bump the curb though, even in a driver's situation, because even when you're taking that road exam, the examiner doesn't want you hitting your vehicle with anything. You want to demonstrate really good control. So just make sure that your vehicle is within 50 centimeters of the curb in front of you on an angle parking. And vehicles should be centered between the two lanes. So in this situation, that vehicle is perfectly centered in that lane. You wouldn't want to be too far over on the right or the left, because then you don't give yourself enough room for the other vehicles, or you don't give yourself enough room to exit. You need enough room to open your door and safely leave the vehicle, and not have to bump into other cars. Okay, another parking is hill parking. And I know when I took my knowledge exam, this was one of the questions that came up. So they like asking questions about hill parking because you need to memorize or visualize how to park on a hill. So if you look here on these situations, these are the different scenarios that you might find yourself in on a hill. So the first one at the top is a vehicle where he's facing uphill. So just visualize you're in your car, you're uphill, and there's a curb on the side of your hill. So what you want to do to know you want to prevent your vehicle from potentially rolling. So most of the time we can put on brakes, but you don't want to just rely on your brake system. If an instance where your vehicle the brakes didn't work, if it's a really steep hill or it's really icy. You want to put your car into a position when you leave that it's not going to roll out into oncoming traffic. So this car, the first one at the top, we know that if it's facing upwards, it's going to roll back. And if it's going to roll back, what would we want it to do? We want to position those tires. We want to turn them to the right so that if it rolls back, the tires will hit the curb and it'll stop. If you were to do it the other way, left, they'll roll, but then your back tires might hit the curb, or you might hit a car that's parked behind you. So the best possible situation is uphill with a curb. You want to turn your wheels pointing to the left. Sorry, I know that there's a lot of words, so I'm trying to help you guys visualize it. So like it says, if you're parking facing uphill on a street with a curb, turn the wheels towards the left so that your vehicle will roll back and hit the curb. The second situation, if you're parking on a hill facing downwards, but you still have a curb, now think of where your vehicle is going to roll. It's going to roll forward. So you wouldn't want your tires to the left because you're going to roll your vehicle into oncoming traffic. You would want to turn your wheels to the right so that your vehicle can roll forward and hit the curb and stop. The third situation is if you're parking uphill without a curb. So think of where your vehicle is going to roll. If it doesn't have a curb to stop it, the best situation if your car is going to roll back is we want it to roll into the ditch and out of traffic's way. So you turn your wheels facing towards the right so that the right end of your vehicle is going to roll into the ditch and out of traffic. And then the last situation, number 4, is if you're parking facing downwards, again without a curb, you want to still turn your vehicles left so that even if you roll and that curb's not there to stop you, you're going to roll into the ditch versus rolling out into traffic. So hopefully you guys get that. You also need to, when you're doing a hill park, you need to set your parking brake. So this is something that most automatic cars nowadays, we're so used to putting it into the parking gear versus driving gear, but we're not so used to using that parking brake. It's also, some people refer to it as an e-brake or an emergency brake. And sometimes they can be located beside the driver's side vehicle to easily pull it up. But in other vehicles, like my vehicle, my parking brake is found down below with some of my gears, and it's like a foot brake. I have to push it with my foot. So you definitely, again, need to pay attention to where the parking brake is equipped on your vehicle, and you definitely need to use it in a hill parking situation. Because just having your vehicle in park is usually pretty good on normal flat surfaces, but on a hill there's a lot more pressure for your vehicle wanting to roll forward. So you need to use that parking brake or that emergency brake and leave it like that. And they will actually watch for that in your road exam as well. We're almost done this chapter, so bear with me. There's also situations when you're parking where you are not allowed to park. So remember yesterday when we were reviewing signs, if you see this sign in anywhere around you, it means no parking is permitted. And so it can also have different times, like I had mentioned, maybe like the business hours in front of that, they want to reserve their parking spots for customers, things like that. So pay attention to that no parking sign, because you are not allowed to leave your vehicle there even for a couple minutes. There's a lot of people, and sometimes you may even see it with like taxis and things like that. They'll park and they're like, oh, it's just a couple minutes, but that couple minutes can really obstruct the other road users. So You got to pay attention to those no parking signs. But there's a lot of other situations. Sometimes you'll be in situations where there is a no parking sign, but these situations you need to understand you still cannot park there. Even if there's not a sign prohibiting it, these are the type of situations where you cannot park your vehicle. So you cannot park your vehicle on a sidewalk or boulevard. That's pretty obvious, but it may come up as a question on your knowledge exam. You cannot park on a crosswalk or any part of a crosswalk. So, yesterday we were talking about pedestrians, and sometimes you'll see those crosswalks painted on the road, but sometimes you won't. So you need to understand that you cannot leave your vehicle parked in those crosswalks, because then you would be obstructing pedestrians. And just like you can't stop your vehicle in there when you're coming up to a stop sign, you need to stop before that crosswalk. You can't leave your vehicle parked there either. You cannot park within 1.5 meters of access to a garage or a private roadway or an alleyway. So, on residential roads, when you have houses and then they have a little driveway that comes up either to their property or to their garage, that's what that's talking about. You cannot park within 1.5 meters from that driveway. So if you're on a residential road and you're going to go visit somebody and you park in front of their house, you need to make sure you give enough clearance away from their driveway. And that's intended that if there's a vehicle coming out from a driveway, that they have enough time to actually turn their vehicle safely into the lane and pull out from their property. If you're parked way too close, they don't have enough room to safely turn, and they're going to have to come out a lot farther and then turn in the roadway and potentially cross over with oncoming traffic. So that's so that vehicles can see around you and move their vehicle safely out of the driveway. You cannot park within an intersection other than immediately next to the curb of a T intersection. So in the next chapter, we're going to talk more about different intersections. But general rule of thumb, you cannot park in an intersection, like a four-way intersection. You wouldn't want to stop your vehicle in there because you got vehicles coming all over in every direction. The only instance where you can park in an intersection is on a T intersection where you're not obstructing, where you're on the side of the road where there's no vehicles crossing your path. You cannot park within 5 meters of a stop sign or a yield sign. And so always allow yourself enough distance, like the image shows here. There's a stop sign there, and you can't leave your vehicle parked within 5 meters of that stop sign. And that's so that other vehicles can see the stop sign well in advance. Like say you're in a lifted truck and you park way too close. Other road users won't be able to see that stop sign until it's too late. Also gives them enough time that say there was a vehicle coming and wanted to turn right at that intersection, you're giving them enough room to make that turn to that intersection. The second image on the right hand, it doesn't have the stop sign there, but that's the instance where there's a crosswalk, right? You can't park in that crosswalk and you still need to give a 5 meter distance. So we talk about the rule of 5 because there's another situation here where you cannot park within 5 meters of a fire hydrant. So the rule of 5 basically means that in a lot of situations, you cannot park within 5 meters of a fire hydrant, 5 meters of a crosswalk, 5 meters of a stop sign or a yield sign, 1.5 meters from a driveway, and 50 centimeters from the curb. So this is where that rule of thumb might come in really handy for you when you're doing your knowledge test. You're likely going to get asked a question somewhere about parking, and so within that parking, they may ask you, how far must you stay away from a fire hydrant? And they'll give you a certain amount of options, like 10 meters, 2 meters, 5 meters, 6 meters. You want to generally default to the 5 meters, because as we just went over this chapter, there's a lot of instances where that rule 5 or those 5 meters is a common reoccurrence.